Welcome to Real Estate Hustlers Podcast. I'm your host, Josh Appleman, founder and CEO of Appleman Properties. Today we're joined with Sharon Riddle. Sharon is a seasoned professional with over 30 years experience in the business solutions world, transitioning into real estate with her husband, Dan. From single family homes to multifamily properties, Sharon is an expert in property management and finding great investment properties. Sharon, we appreciate you coming on the show today. If you could let the listeners know a little bit more about yourself.
Oh, yeah. I'm so happy to be here today. And as you said, I really made the transition from single family, which I did self-manage the portfolio, to multifamily. So my real estate journey started in 2005, and then we had the pivot in 2015 to multifamily investing.
So tell us about the business solutions world that you come from and what experience you've gained that transition over to real estate.
Well, the business solutions world is where I was working with web developers, and we were doing a migration from a legacy system. So, it had the dummy computers and all that kind of stuff, moving forward to a cloud-based solution. So that was really great. I will say, even working with uh, the marketing team member who developed our website, some of these cross skills just really moved over into my real estate business because it wasn't that hard to really diagram out the application because I'd work with web developers doing something internal to a transit system in Dallas. But I will also say my cross skills as a financial analyst as well, and pairing that with my MBA, has really helped too, because that's another set of cross skills, your system skills as well as your financial skills.
Yeah, just how data is structured and then how it kind of correlates from well, you moved everything over to the cloud, so the infrastructure of the like AppFolio systems, property management systems, as well as ERPs. Um, Tell us about your financial acumen and how that works in your favor with underwriting and multifamily.
Well, I pair up my underwriting with a team. Another team member is is a microelectronic engineer. So we got an engineer, on the team too. And my business partner and spouse, Dan and I have been married 36 years. He's in aerospace. So he has done system implementation specifically in an MRP or an ERP system. And so numbers are our friend with our little trio. We're the core team, and then we expand from that. The numbers really have to pass our screening to be the go or no go.
Yeah,
So
yeah, and
that's
you
how we
can
work it.
underwrite hundreds of deals before you get to that one, and then you just have to take action and on the one. That's
You got to dive deep.
Yeah, yeah, I totally agree. So on your single family, you all started out on the single family front. How many properties did you gain, and then self managing? Tell us a little bit about that experience as well.
Sure. Well, at the max, we had 10. And we had it at a really interesting time period because, you had the credit crunch of 2008. Well, we could kind of sense that things were changing and credit was tightening. So we ended up going to a boot camp in San Antonio, Texas. And this was held by Alan Cowgill. And we learned how to work with private lenders. So, we had friends and family and even, some neighbors on some of our projects. They were the bank because the bank wasn't loaning. Our main account was with Chase. And it taught us a secondary lesson in that time to also work with community banks or regional banks as well.
Yeah, do you all still currently utilize different community banks uh, versus like your Fannie Freddies when you're purchasing multifamily?
Yeah, we still do bank with community banks because they are very friendly. They actually are more receptive to small business, and that was part of what we learned in working with Alan Cowgill as well.
What kind of things did he teach you about working with private lenders? Like, what are some takeaways?
Well, some takeaways are that you people really can be your bank. And we already had a pre-existing relationship with a real estate attorney. So she could go in there and draw up promissory notes. So we would have a person that could be first position or second position. And in fact, my late father-in-law, Charles Riddle, was our very first private lender. He was our private lender on our first two properties
Nice.
that we used that technique on.
And then you get your track record built up, and then more private lenders want to partake, especially if you can return their cash plus interest.
Or
It's a win.
or they want to come back, Josh.
Yeah.
They're kind of a little bit addicted. It's kind of like candy. You just give them the candy, give them the candy, give them the candy. And we had investors that were repeat investors because it was profitable for them. They knew the money was coming, and we had a really strong business relationship with them.
Got it. What made you want to transition over to larger multifamily properties?
Well, we could not scale the portfolio large enough for our goals. And so that's why we moved into multifamily. But it was a single family coach in Arlington, Texas that introduced us to Brad Sumrock, who helped us learn some of the nuts and bolts of multifamily investing almost a decade ago.
Yeah, he's you all have almost 3,500 units, and
We do.
having a formal mentor and a coach to help guide you towards those transactions. I know that's huge. It takes the easy path there. Tell us some. Tell us between the single family and multifamily. You you're meeting people, you're networking. Tell us about the first multifamily deal and how it came about.
Well, the first multifamily deal came about because we were personal mentoring students of Brad's. Now, since that time period, he has actually really since pretty much the 2018, 2019 timeframe, he added a mastermind. But at that point in time, you had two student mentoring programs. You could have a foundation program, and that was really exclusively for passive investors. And then there was the personal mentoring, and that was for individuals who were aspiring to be general partners at some point in their investing career. And then the mastermind was taking it to another level, and you having introduction to people who were seasoned general partners, and getting into some more into some additional content that was not covered in some of the modules or the coaching calls that you had access to.
Like what kind of modules? Just like deep dives or tactical ways of building portfolios? Give us some examples.
Well, excuse me. It was deep dive. It was a deep dive into underwriting, asset management. There were a lot of different modules, and they covered different topics. And that's pretty much what the modules included. Now, every month there is a coach's call, and that's where you're really going over some specific topics. But there is a coach leading it, and there's people who are on the call. So you chat with some of your investor friends too in the chat. To be quite honest, when those calls are also going on.
Got it. So your first deal, you're helping assistant coaching, and then a student finds a deal, or how does that come about?
Yeah, a student finds the deal. And I will say this is a student who we've been in touch with. He was also in aerospace, which is really what kind of attracted Dan to him. And he's still very active in the multifamily space. He's invested more in the Houston market versus the Dallas-Fort Worth market. And he, instead of being a solo general partner, he decided on a general partner model where there are two partners. So there's not as much stress on one, and there's more continuity too, in case there's some unforeseen situation, health, etc.
Yeah. How many people on your all's 3,500 units? Are you all the GP, the sole GP, or are you the LPs mixed with GP?
We've been KPs or LPs to date.
Okay.
And we have been best and final in two general partner deals. So we've been, we're still on the hunt. That's what I like to tell the brokers. We are still on the hunt. We have to have the right time and the right property within our buy box.
So for some listeners that might be tuning in on an LP front, what are some experiences, lessons learned that you've gained through the years?
Well, I have learned not to be afraid of fires. I can tell you that because we have two acquisitions, newer acquisitions that have had fires. In fact, the property that I was talking to you about before we were on the air had a fire, and I toured the property, and they're moving forward on the reconstruction as well as the operations side of the house. But our very first fire actually ended up being our very first three-time return on our principal in 30 months, which was really very outstanding. And that was in the 2016 timeframe.
Can you take us down that path on how that came about, how the first fire returned to 3x?
Well, I will say it was a single general partner. It really did put him under a lot of stress, but he was working super closely with the property manager. Well, actually, the property management company that also had a construction arm. And this individual, Ryan Weiner, was very adept at that time period of working with code, the code inspection side of the house in cities. And so this was a more modest property in Duncanville, Texas. And what attracted us to this property is the fact that we had a long time single family rental that was a bank owned property in that market. So we knew a little bit about the market. That particular apartment actually was even in a more desirable part of Duncanville as far as income. And so it was just like a little gem that had to wait to be discovered. And I have to give a lot of credit to Aaron Katz for being so diligent. He even had us meet on site, the investors, and we took a property tour post construction. So I feel that really put a lot of confidence into the investor and the investors that were on the property, and just his process in general. It really instilled a lot of confidence. And I will share a super funny story, because even to be on this deal as an LP, I literally had to run after Aaron because he was in a zone. You know, you get in a zone and you tune out everything because you're just so, you're so focused. And I had to run after him and ask him, where do I wire the money? Because he just was kind of tuning me out. And this was at one of our mentors' bus tours.
That's
it's kind of a crazy little story, but Aaron and I even remember that because he immediately turned around and we had a conversation because I used the keywords, where do I wire the money?
Well, you got his attention. I'm sure you got it over to him. But what about the rising interest rates? What about we all kind of got blindsided with how fast the Fed raised the rates, and then there's communities that are in the middle of the business plan, and as far as renovations goes and this and that. Have you had any adverse experience as far as that goes with all of your properties?
I will say the newer portion of the portfolio, and that is really acquisitions after 2022, 2023 have really experienced that crunch, the credit crunch, because some of those were still on a bridge loan, and that is a more variable rate, as you well know, versus an agency loan. So some of those have really had to kind of grind it out through the crunch.
I just got an email today on for HUD financing 87% loan to value with 1.9 DSCR on a 35-year AM. So it's like, wow. But it's a 223, so it does take like 9 months to close. But
right, yeah. But that's an improvement in what we have seen previously as far as
sure.
LTV. Yeah, it's been kind of really well. So many general partners have had to include more of a raise outside the loan. And that is
Yeah,
a
yeah.
huge difference I've seen from the 2015 time frame from when we first became investors to present day.
Where are you all predominantly investing at? Is it just Texas?
Well, we are predominantly in that Texas triangle, and I'll take a moment to explain what Texas triangle is to your audience. It is really Dallas, Fort Worth, Austin, San Antonio, and Houston. 80% of the commerce of the state of Texas is conducted in that quadrant, and 80% of the population resides there. So
Got
that's
it.
primarily where we invest. Now, I will say we have followed some investors to some other areas. Uh, we've had some investments in the Denver MSA because we had those contacts, and one of those properties was just a 100 unit in Aurora, Colorado, and it went a little over 3 times the return on principal. We were actually a KP on that particular property. And we've had a property in Jacksonville, Florida, and that sold, and I think we had 2 times the return on our investment. And we've also had Oklahoma City. Oklahoma City has not been as kind to us regarding our return on investment, but we certainly came out more than whole on the properties to date there. And then also Columbus, Ohio. Columbus, Ohio has been really great for us. And part of the reason is not only the general partner and his ability and the property management company's ability, but also the affordability gap that really does exist in Columbus, Ohio.
Yeah, Columbus, that's about 2 hours north of me. I'm in Cincinnati. So yeah,
Oh,
it's,
you're a Cincinnati guy. Okay.
yeah, yeah. So Columbus is a booming market. It's there's a lot of job growth for sure.
Right.
Uh,
And I will take a moment to say that we actually do have family that live in Powell and in Columbus. So we really did have some family member who were more boots on the ground. So we understood a little bit about what an exceptional market Columbus is in a state that does have a really exceptional affordability gap.
yeah, yeah. I think it's Midwest. It's steady Betty. It's nothing huge, but it's you've got a lot of Fortune 500 companies, and it's
Yeah.
just steady. It's
Well, I will say one of the properties that actually was an A class that did sell. It was in Hilliard, and I know you'll know where Hilliard is. It went a little over 3 times on the return.
yeah. Now that was probably 2022 to 2023 era.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah,
Yeah, it was in those years. It was in those. I don't know. Dan and I privately say in those happier years, but they were in the earlier years for your audience.
yeah. It's the Goldilocks. Well, I mean, in a lot of it's just a cycle like everything else. It
It
just
is.
takes got to go right back through it. What has been one of your some of your heavy learning lessons going through the motions? You've been doing it for a long time. So what would
Yeah.
be some things you wouldn't do again if you knew then what you know now?
Well, I will say one of my more difficult lessons really was having my first capital call as an investor. You're kind of like, well, and it was with the investor that we had the 3 times return in Aurora, Colorado. But they did take with some other general partner team, they did take on a larger project in Southwest Fort Worth. And they got a little caught in the crunch regarding a bridge loan, but also in what you and I talked about as far as evictions. So they've had a tenant population who has been very organized in their protest of their evictions,
Yeah,
and so that's been a real challenge, as well as working with what I'm seeing more of, Josh, with this property and with some others, is there has been more turn of leasing agents, property managers, regional managers, and even having to change property management companies. So I'm seeing a lot more of that post 2022 to present day than I ever saw, pre. Yeah.
I know property management companies, they grew significantly and then spread themselves thin with the employee base. And
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's still finding good people is always going to be an issue, but
Yeah, they just didn't have the bandwidth. They
mhm.
didn't have the capacity, and that actually ended up rolling down to the properties.
Yeah,
And that's always a hard it's always a hard call for the asset portion of any general partner team to change property management companies, because then you have to have another period where you're stabilizing again.
yeah. For them to learn the property and learn who's doing what, your good actors, bad actors, all that good stuff, and then collections. And those properties have personalities on their own too. And then
They,
learning
they
the
really do.
maintenance quirks.
They really do. And I will say this is the largest property that we had been passive investors on. And it was all accredited investors too on that particular property. So it was people who had a higher net income, and also um, we're really seasoned investors. So we've been kind of riding it along with them. They may have to have some other changes, but because we had the capital call, I will say I actually, and because I always read those monthly reports. I'm really diligent about reading the monthly reports. I requested a webinar, and the other difficult part about that is that when they were discussing some of their options, for the challenges that the property was facing, they were including some preferred equity. And I was the one who really voiced some concerns about that. And part of the reason is I'm in two different mastermind groups, and I really believed that that would change the position of the passive investors, that it would change the capital stack.
It does.
Yeah, and I know it did, Josh. And I was the one here over here voicing my concern very firmly about that, and then walking the general partner team through the fact I'd been a former analyst, and I was also in a mastermind that was specifically address capital raising. So I personally do know fund managers who are looking for properties that have challenges so
Yeah.
that they can really have an advantageous acquisition.
100%. And there's good ones, and then like anything else, there's the bad ones that are looking for opportunities just to add to their portfolio too. So that's out there. It's kind of like your mezz debt. It's good at the moment, but then it turns toxic and it's poison, and then it just goes from there.
Well, and personally, I did not really, and I really addressed these in some pretty strong terminology. I said I did not want my investment of $90,000 to vaporize. I
Right.
felt like I had to be that firm in the webinar. I mean, I know it didn't surprise the general partner who brought me on, because we've had a very frank relationship for some time. But it did surprise some of the other general partners because the webinar was recorded.
Well, yeah, and that's where LPs have their voice. You all have just as much right to vote for things as much as they do, and ultimately, if they got you all to the position that you're at, then things should be questioned and addressed.
Exactly.
Uncomfortable conversations, there's nothing wrong with that. It's got to take
Well,
place. Somebody's got to do it.
well, I felt like I was the woman who had to tackle that job that day.
Yeah. Well, good for you. And how did that turn out? Did they move forward with just capital call, no other outside?
Well, they had
Press?
had a capital call before the webinar, before I requested the webinar, but they are seeking out some other options besides just bringing in preferred equity and changing the capital stack. So they are reviewing some additional options now, because I used my voice very firmly and very forcefully.
Is it a bridge loan?
It's a
That
bridge
is
loan. Yeah,
okay.
it's a bridge loan. Yeah.
Yeah, those are tough. And then you've got your business plan that you're executing with renovations, trying to get rents at market rate, and you've got a property that's not stabilized.
Yeah.
Like you had mentioned, going through evictions, like that's any property, but trying to just control it during the renovations process. But there are good pref partners out there. Just you've got to read the fine print and see what it's about. But it does change the capital stack.
It does. And there are some other options that they're looking at now. So we'll see how some of that really shakes out. But
Yeah.
I felt like they were trying to move too quickly to only the preferred equity solution versus broadening out the possible solutions that could help them in their cash position as well.
Got it. Well, that's an experience to put on the belt and a tool down the road to use, and now you know. Very cool. What would you suggest somebody who's looking to get into real estate? What would you suggest them do, and what path to take?
Well, I would suggest them really use your voice, just like I described. So don't be afraid to really utilize your voice and have those difficult conversations, because sometimes they really are needed. And then also, like what I've described before, use your cross skills, because your cross skills are a real strength and they are directly transferable into real estate.
Oh, yeah.
So those are a couple of things that I would recommend just right off the top of my head.
What about books? Any books you would suggest?
Well, I will say a favorite real estate book of mine, because it's helped me on my tax position side, is Tax-Free Wealth. And I have met the author, Tom Wheelwright, who is Robert Kiyosaki's CPA, more than once. And what a blessing to have met Tom so many times.
Yeah, there's like any industry, you've got your rules, and as long as you abide by your rules, you play the game, and you can increase your odds of winning.
And because I met Tom, I actually did change CPA firms, and I currently work with CPAs from Provision. So we have a lot more going for us than we did before 2019, because we also have a bookkeeper for our different entities, our different LLCs, as well as our two CPAs who really are staying on top of things.
Yeah, and that helps with the back end team, making sure that you're utilizing everything that's available. In real estate, there's a lot of tools that are available to kind of hedge your tax exposure. So it's utilizing someone who's seasoned in the industry and can help guide you through. So no,
and I will say that the tax, taking a look at the tax strategy is always a component of what I look at. Not only our real estate investing, and also what the performance is in that snapshot, but also what is my tax position. So I encourage people to not only look at real estate for the gain, but look at the tax strategy and tax advantage that you can reap from that.
Yeah, and who knows, we might see 100% depreciation coming back. So
you can always wish for that, but you and I certainly have experienced that. So
yeah, that is it. Awesome. Sharon, if somebody wants to reach out, learn more about yourself, possibly invest with you, how can they get a hold of you?
Well, you can go to my website, which is www.excalibre, and I'm going to spell that. It's EXCALIBRE, Texas.com. So you can go to the website, and I'm certainly on social media. Josh and I have connected on LinkedIn, but I'm also on Instagram, and I'm on Facebook. So I'm out there, and I have a YouTube channel too.
And how do they get to the YouTube channel?
Well, they can either search for Sharon Riddle or my company, Excalibre Texas. So they can do both, because I have a YouTube channel for both.
Awesome. Sharon, truly appreciate your time today. Look forward to following you, and we will talk soon.
Thanks so much.